Welcome to Heart to Mind, produced by Mars Studios. I'm your host, Rumays, and
It's your boy Samir.
today we have our guest, first female guest, Radha Balani. She's originally from UK, and right now she is currently in New York. She has experience in media and sports, especially in soccer, and also right now she's working with community development programs, I believe.
Social impact
Social
programs, yeah.
impact programs. Yep. Hope I got that right.
Listen, we'll find out in the conversation, won't we? We're not far off for sure.
Yeah. So let's start with a bit of an icebreaker. So you said that to our previous guest Lawrence, you said you know him. So I guess you guys went to
Loughborough?
Loughborough
Yeah.
University. So was that the first university that you went, or how was your education like?
Sure. Universities in the UK are quite different to the US in terms of the process and your journey when you're there. So you specialise really early in the UK, even though loads of people, whatever they do in their careers, got nothing to do with their degree. But so I went all the way through what you would call high school, and I knew from the age of 14 that I wanted to go to Loughborough or I wanted to go to Duke over here. And I landed on Loughborough because I wanted to study sports science and English, because when I was younger, I thought I wanted to be a sports journalist. A little bit of me still does, and I still get to do quite a lot of writing, and I still, do speak a lot and I host a lot. But I that's not what I ended up doing. Whilst I was there, I studied sports science and English, but I got injured in my fresher year. I injured my knee. I was playing soccer at the time,
Mm.
and since then I've had six knee operations. So I went there to play soccer. I was never going to be a pro. I was not that good. I just worked really hard. So I didn't have loads of natural talent, but I worked and worked and worked. But I got injured, and that meant I started getting involved in the way that sport was run at Loughborough, and I ran to be elected for something called Athletic Union President, which is the student representative of all student sport. I don't know whether Lawrence told you this or not, but Loughborough has been the equivalent of the NCAA champions since day
You
one.
did
They've
not
never
mention this.
lost. They've never lost. When I say that, university sport in the UK is like a tiny speck compared to college sport here. So it's not comparable, but the concept of being the best university in the UK for sport, and that being Loughborough. So I had the great privilege of being Athletic Union president at Loughborough, and that is what started my career in sports.
What was your role as a athletic president?
So I was responsible for representing, at the time, there were 54 different sports played at Loughborough by sports teams, and that was against other colleges, so intercollegiate sport. And the intramural stuff was looked after by a different body, but we were responsible for all 54 teams, their budgets, making sure they went to all their fixtures on time. If something went wrong, we'd have to put in a complaint, a claim. But mostly for me, because Loughborough was such a big sports university and we had a big budget, I was really lucky enough to have amazing people working with me to do that. So I got to play a really representative role in terms of the role of student sport on campus, what it meant, what they needed for development, what our role was within the university sector. So I was really lucky. I got to sit next to this amazing man called Rod Thorpe. In the UK, he's known as sort of the godfather of sports development, and he's the first one that really put high performance sport at universities on the map. And I was sitting next to him in meetings, and I was 20 years old, and I was in meetings with grown-ups.
So you're kind of like a young leader kind of thing.
Yeah, similar to that. And I just had this incredible opportunity to learn how to be in the workforce. But the most important thing I learned from him was how to make sure everyone wins when you're around the table, how you find consensus, how you do things nicely. So yeah, that was my role.
So how did you so you said that you got injured from soccer and then you just moved on from there to to a leadership role. So what was the original plan in college, and how did it shift over time to be where you are right now? Because
Sure.
I know you shifted from like sport and then you went to media and then you did a couple of
Sure.
different stuff.
So it came from opportunity, and it came from being honest to myself. So after I finished my sabbatical year at Loughborough as Athletic Union president, I had an option. I deferred a master's in sports psychology, and I could have stayed at Loughborough and done my sports psychology master's, and I could very much see myself ending up as a sports psychologist. However, Loughborough is a place where if you don't leave, you don't leave. And I thought that if I stayed another year, I might never leave. And I said, okay, I'm not ready to do this master's now. Maybe I'll come back to it. I just want to take some time. And as it happened, the chief executive of what was then called BUSA, which is British University Sports Association, now called BUCS, their marketing communications manager had been seconded by the British Olympic Association during the Athens 2024 Games to go and help them. He needed someone to come and just take over her role for 6 months. And he asked me if I'd like to do it. He asked me because obviously he'd seen my work at Loughborough. And for me, it wasn't that I was remarkable in any way. It's just that I was reliable. I showed up. I did what was asked of me, and I was nice in the way that I did it. I think that's what made him think I was reliable and trustworthy. So I spent 6 months doing that, which was great. And then I got a different role there, which was to be a sports program manager, which meant I was responsible for 10 sports within universities. So 10 different sports, making sure all the competitions took place, all the way from the lowest level, all the way to what we would say in the UK as home nations. Over here, it would be state versus state. So I was responsible for that. And what
That's
I
a big
learned from that,
responsibility.
yeah, and what I learned from that is I don't really enjoy event management that much. I can do it. I don't really enjoy having to be massively operational and plan ahead and be organized. That's not, I can do it. I'm not very good at it, and other people are better. And it was a wonderful experience. I learned amazing resilience, hard work. I met incredible people and I got to do wonderful things. But it wasn't where my heart was. I always had something in my heart around the role of sport in the world for change. And so I took a little sideways backward step, took a pay cut, and went to work for the Football Foundation, which is the equivalent of the US Soccer Foundation.
Geography.
Yeah.
So what was your role there? Like, what did you do? Because you seem to work for there a long time now.
Yeah, I was there for seven and a bit years. So I started as a small grants project manager, which was how do we get money out into communities to get new teams started. So whether those are adding additional age groups, adding a new girls section, adding disability soccer. So I started as a small grants project manager, and I had 4 or 5 different roles there over the time, and I ended as head of communications and corporate relations. And I went from small grants to big community grants that worked alongside big soccer pitches being built. And during that time, the EPL, the Premier League, decided that they were going to bring the community side in-house and they were going to look after that versus giving it to the Football Foundation to look after. So my job for the last year or so was to close the community programs that I was on and hand them over to the Premier League. And when that had been done, I knew my time was ready to leave. So I left at that point.
I have a quick question. Lauren said when we had the podcast with him yesterday that roles are not really that important. I'm just curious,
Yeah.
right? So in the UK, are roles really like a big deal, or is it like only the money aspect? Because that's what he literally
So
said.
he was like,
Yeah, but he works in finance.
Oh yeah, that's
I work in sport for social change. If it was about money, I'd go and work for one of the big 4 as a strategist there because that's what I do. I'm a strategist, and I'm a man. You know, we're a consultant, so I could just go and work for the big 4, get double the amount, but have no soul. You know,
no,
for me,
the thing that he did say, I think you got the thing wrong. So he was like, oh, in UK, the tradition or like the culture is in a way that they care about the income that you make and not the title of the job that you do.
yeah, when you're going for jobs, I think in the fully corporate world, absolutely. But I think in the niche sort of world that I'm in, I think it's a bit of both. I think it's a bit of both. We're talking about. I'm sure Lawrence earns 70 million times more than I do. So they're slightly different industries, but I don't think titles are as important as they used to be. I think that we are in a place now where being able to talk about who you are, how you behave, what your values are, and what you deliver and what you bring to an organization. When I'm interviewing people, that's what I'm interested in. Are they bringing both attitude and aptitude to the business, and are they prepared to learn and be part of a team? A great paycheck is always valuable, but I need to pay my soul as well.
Makes
No
sense.
offense to Lawrence, because I'm sure he does that as well.
No, he also mentioned that doesn't matter if you make a penny or not. If you do what you love, that's going to actually fulfill you more than more than the money.
I agree, and I think that's true. I think that's true for people that are privileged enough to be able to do that. I think that there are people out there that work and work and work just to make ends meet, and I think they would love to have the privilege to be able to do something slightly different, but the world doesn't give them that. And I think that what we do, what you do at NYCFC, allows that shift to happen for people and allows them to move up from in terms of social capital.
Okay, so how did you move on to what you're right now?
Sure.
Like
Okay.
think beyond social and social sports for social change, and also like the media aspect.
Yeah.
And like meeting with people like Billie Jean King.
Sure, no
Working with
problem.
them.
So after the Football Foundation, I went to a place called Women in Sport, which is like the Women's Sport Foundation over here. And I looked after I set up a consultancy for them. And, my job was to they're a brilliant research organisation. Everything we learn from the research, what does that mean in real terms? How can sport use it to make sure that all women and girls get the opportunity to reap the benefits of sports? So I did that for a bit. And then I went to somewhere called London Sport, which was setting up a new organisation to, make sure all Londoners had the opportunity to reap the rewards of sport. And then after that, I joined Think Beyond. And all the way through my career, there has been, what is the role of sport in the world? It's always been sport for social change. It's just that there really wasn't an industry called that at the time, and now there is. So I've been with Think Beyond for 7 years. I started as director of strategy. We went through some other funny job titles like director of design and facilitation, and I'm now one of 3 partners that runs the business. I'm the managing partner based out in New York, and my job here is to re-establish our physical footprint here after COVID. We have a number of US clients, but we didn't have anyone here after COVID, and to grow the business out here, as well as look after our US clients, grow our presence, grow our footprint, and hopefully grow our influence around setting new standards of excellence for sports role, in terms of having purposeful leaders in this world that care about driving business and social and environmental agendas together, about having leaders that have profile, athletes, etc., using their profile to drive change, having sustainable organizations. That's everything from environmental sustainability all the way through governance into DE&I and how we treat our people, so people, planet, community, what we do around us, and then how we actually use sport on the ground, impactful programs for change, and then finally, the real power of sport is when we can use it for mass mobilization to change behaviors, and that's really about how we communicate what we do. And so with all of that, my job is to work with organizations to work out where they are on that journey and how we can help them do it. As part of that, one of my clients is ESPN, and that's really how the sort of our work with a broadcaster came along. We designed the safe spaces strategy for ESPN, which was creating safe soccer spaces around the world, but most importantly, doing it through a process of community engagement. So we're not going into a favela, to a slum, to a barrio, and just plonking a pitch down and saying, here you go, be grateful. We're going in and engaging with communities to understand what they need, what a sports space might do for them, what would happen on it, what sort of programming do they need to make sure that we get education outcomes from them, health outcomes. And during that process, we have the space built, we do a big inauguration, and then the community owns that space and they drive some revenue from it so they can maintain it, and we support the programming that takes place on it. So we've done it all over the world, and we're now doing it in North America as well. And through that relationship with ESPN, they created their partnership with Billie Jean King to set up the Billie Jean King Youth Leadership Award as part of the ESPYs and the Sports Humanitarian Awards. And in the first year, it was just an award, not just an award. It was an amazing award with a scholarship or donation to a non-profit. After that, Billie Jean King and ESPN decided they wanted to do some programming alongside it. So making sure that these youth leaders got a leadership program where they were supported, and they gave us the opportunity to design and deliver that program. And so I've been doing that for 5 years, and it is honestly one of the most valuable pieces, like the most soul nourishing pieces of work I will ever do. And I'm so thrilled that we're doing it again for 2024-25.
So wait, do you scout these young leaders, or like
both?
people?
We work with our sister non-profit, which is Beyond Sport, to put the call out for young people like yourself to apply, put a nomination in, and we get all of the nominations together. We actively go out and seek these nominations. We support people in writing their applications. The idea isn't to give the support to give an award to the person that can write the best. It's about what you do. And so we help people articulate what they do as well. And then we get to do the most wonderful and awful thing, which is we get to read everyone's application, listen to their videos, listen to what they say, and see this incredible number of young people changing the world. And then we have to choose some of them. That's so hard, because it's like, who's great and who's great? And so we do have to make sensible decisions. So who's going to, some people aren't meeting the criteria, and that's fine. And we do get to make these decisions and invite people to have hopefully what is a life-changing experience for them, whether that's the national honorees that get to go to the ESPYs and have that experience, but all of the honorees who get to have a year's worth of leadership programming, speak to experts, have one-to-one coaching with me. For me, that's a privilege that I get to be in everyone's corner. And it's not just for the duration of the program, it's for the rest of their lives, as far as I'm concerned. Like, I will always be there for those people because they want to make a difference. And if I can just be there to help that, and that isn't that I have the answers. Sometimes you all just need to know that you're doing fine, and that you need someone that's not in your day-to-day life to speak to. And I'm that person sometimes. And sometimes it is about guidance and advice. And a lot of the time it's just about cheering you on.
So what are some ways you choose these people? Like, I'm
Sure.
sure you get a lot of people.
Yeah. So there's a set criteria, and the main part is, how are you using sport as a catalyst for social change within either your community or a wider community? So some are using it for advocacy to change laws. Some are using it, like you, directly in the community, trying to create ways that young people can take opportunities that wouldn't necessarily be there for them, to be able to use your app to find a safe, fun place where they can feel included, to have a pickup game. And so they have to meet the criteria. There are lots of wonderful young people who volunteer for non-profits. That's great, but that's not what we're looking for. We're looking for the ones that go above and beyond that. It's about the people that come up with something new, that say, you know what, we don't have a homework club, and therefore when we're coaching, the kids are worried that they're not going to get their homework done because they've got such a small period before they need to get home, because their parents need them at home, because maybe their parents don't speak English as a first language, for example. And so how do we look at those young people who say, I'm coming up with ideas to solve problems? Amazing young people who set up their own non-profits and collect lightly used sports equipment to make sure others that wouldn't be able to afford them can get them. The ones that challenge unfair discriminatory laws about religious headwear when you're playing sports. So we go through and we just see who meets the criteria, who is going to really, really take value from the program, and who's going to continue to make a difference going forward. Honestly, it's such a hard decision. It's heartbreaking and
How many applicants you get?
It changes every year, but anything between sort of 50 and 70. I think this year we're going to have
1,000?
more. No, just numbers.
Okay.
But this year we're going to have more,
Okay.
because there are 20 regional honorary spots available and 3 national. So that's an additional 10.
So I could apply.
You can apply. You can apply.
Okay.
The expression of interest is open right now,
Maybe
and the formal application will open in a few weeks.
Okay. Maybe we'll talk after this.
We can talk.
But being like the strategist and like consulting with a lot of those things, like you set up the programs to help other communities work, right? For example, like CITC, they do like, oh, set up these new sites in New York City, obviously, to bring in free soccer for every single kid to play and enjoy it. So how does one, right? Let's say for example, like someone's graduating out of high school or college and wants to do that.
Yeah.
How does one uh, follow the path to get to that
It's a
place?
great question. So our job is would have been in that scenario with CITC is to help them establish the strategy that they were going to follow. Like, so if the question is, we want every single young person in New York City to be able to access soccer for free and enjoy it. If that's the challenge, our job would be to come up with a strategy to do it, right? So I think that there are two parts to the question: is do you want to be the people enabling the people on the ground doing the work, or do you want to be the ones on the ground doing the work? Now, I know I'm better as an enabler, but I think the journey is very similar. It's about getting experience. It's about getting experience. For some people, that means, so some people that will mean a college degree. I think college degrees are important. I don't think they're everything, and I don't think they're necessary for every job. For for the jobs that we have that don't need a specific technical skill, and the technical skill jobs that we have are normally on the more environmental side, I do not have a requirement that you have a college degree. If you do, that's great. I'm interested. If you don't, that's great. I'm interested, right?
Yeah,
So I don't think people should be too worried
about
about
college
that.
degrees.
I think it's amazing if it's something you can afford and you want. But I value diversity of thought, so I want both people that have and people that don't. The way that I think it works now is because this is such a new industry, there isn't a well worn path in. There's starting to be more of a path. There will start to be more graduate programs or first job programs that start to come out. For now, I think it is about being bold and asking people, do you have anything? Can I just have a chat to you to understand how you got into your job? Would you mind just having a look at my resume? I didn't grow up with a network of people, and the way that I did it was that when I met someone that I thought was interesting, I'd ask if I could take them for a coffee and could I hear about their approach, and that has really helped me. So anytime anyone reaches out to me on LinkedIn and asks that, and if they ask it in a way that makes me think they're going to be prepared for a conversation, I will always say yes. So I think that's an important thing to do is when you see something you're interested in, reach out and ask questions. Just don't reach out without preparing yourself. Go and do your research. Think about the questions you want to ask and why you want to ask them. And I'm sure most people will give you that time. I think it's keeping yourself informed about the sector, reading what's going on, finding out why we do sport for social change, finding out what that means for a brand, finding out what that means for a sports property, a team, a league, a franchise, finding out what that means for an athlete, and reading and learning about it, and then just asking questions, going and talking to people and asking questions. Obviously, look for the jobs online, whether they're on LinkedIn, Teamwork Online, wherever else. Um, but I do think that given where we are in the journey of sports impact and sports for social change consulting and sports sustainability consulting, I think there is still time now for people to chart their own path in it. I think in maybe 3 or 4 years it will be slightly more formal.
So like it's not like a traditional job where you're like, oh, it's just a accounting, for example,
Yeah,
like since Lawrence was
yeah,
okay. But accounting is like a job that's already has a title, already has a label on it,
yeah,
all the job responsibilities are laid out, and
yeah,
then it's right there. You just go apply, and then
yeah.
you go. But
It's
this
not
is
there yet.
it's not
It's
there
not
yet.
there yet. It's definitely getting there. I think from a consultancy perspective, there are certain things that you will always do as a consultant. It's really about the environment in which you're doing it, right? We're doing it to drive business and social impact, business and environmental impact, so therefore business and societal impact at the same time. This isn't just about doing something nice. Philanthropy is just about giving and not always expecting impact on return. So we've got philanthropy there, and then you've got CSR, corporate social responsibility. That's kind of about obligation, you know, and it's fine. But really, what I'm interested in is shared value, so that doing good and doing well is part of the fabric of your business. It's just who you are. So then when times are tight, You don't think, let's just cut out this bit because it's nice to have, because it's integral to the success of the business, to how your consumers see you, to how your employees see you, to your future generation of employers, to therefore to your bottom line. And so, our job is to make it a shared value process.
Is there any cons of your role, or is there any like obstacles?
Sure. I mean, I think it's hard. I've come out here to reestablish the business, and I'm known out here, not massively known, but I'm known in a tiny way out here for something very different. So for Beyond Sport, I've always hosted their big events. So people often see me as Beyond Sport, and my job is to be an MC or a host or a moderator. And I love doing that. I would love to do that for the rest of my life. And maybe in the future I will, who knows. But that's not actually what I do. I run a consultancy that is a global consultancy, and I run it in partnership with a bunch of incredibly bright, wonderful people. So really changing that understanding of what we do and understanding where our offer fits in a North America market, and the fact that I'm out here on my own doing it. There are 24 people in the London office and there's me here. That's hard. Moving
So it's
country.
only
Yeah.
one person here doing that?
It's one person. Obviously, I'm supported by the UK team. So when we're delivering work, I'm not doing all the projects on my own by any stretch,
But that's still a lot of work. Like being in you got your main office in UK, but then you're just
When
that
you
one person.
when did you move here?
January 2023. So I've been here just over a year.
Oh, it's been a year. Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
So my dog and I moved here and got an apartment, sorted a new office for the business, made friends.
Was it hard, the transition?
Do you know what? All of the big stuff in life, I find, I weirdly feel like I'm okay. It's the little things that really, really threw me. In the UK, when you rent an apartment, it normally comes furnished. You never rent a furnished apartment in New York, right? So I moved into an empty building, and I was like, how do you buy a bed? How do you buy how do
yeah, I
how do
know
we
what
buy
you
a
mean.
shower curtain? I've never had to do any of these things.
So they all
don't-
came pre-made there? Like,
Yeah.
well,
yeah,
That's
most
it,
of it, yeah. Because lots of it's private
Even-
landlords as well.
okay,
Even
okay,
in
okay.
Egypt, it's the same thing.
Right. And it threw me. I was like, I don't know how to buy a sofa. I don't know how to buy a bed. Those were the things that I found really difficult. Because I love working out, I will always meet people in the gym. And because I have a dog and I go walking with him, I will always meet other people that walk dogs. And also because my dog's got a really goofy smile and a walk, people stop and speak to me about it. And so I've been lucky enough to meet friends. I knew lots of people in New York anyway, so I wasn't coming here completely without relationships. But it's the first time I've lived away from the UK. And I mean, I love it here. I love it, love it, love it here.
Definitely. Like, so you going back to like the fact that you're working on yourself by yourself here, right? Not like as in like obviously for a project as you said
Yeah.
you work with your team, but how does it feel being like that one person just
Yeah.
I don't want to say cast out because you're not, but it's like just
Yeah.
this has been separate.
It's honestly, it's
How
been
does it
really
feel?
interesting to see how it's manifested itself in me. I spent last year probably not working from a place of trust and confidence in myself, and I can look back now and say, okay, I should have started with trust and confidence and asked for more help on the way. And so this year, like I make a vision board with my therapist every year, and this year at the bottom of it is confidence, just trusting my ability to know when I need help and trusting my ability to know what I know and work out what I don't. So last year was hard because of that. Knowing that I'd played such a role in the UK in the development of the business in the UK, I've been there for 7 years, so I'm one of the longest standing members of staff. I think I was employee number 5, and now we're up to 25. So knowing that I have much less influence there, my role was a lot around the person side of it, the people side of it. I'm pretty good when someone walks into a room at knowing how they're feeling, and I read body language quite well. So if I feel like the team is struggling, I'm the first to go over and say, hey, should we grab a coffee? I don't get to do that as much anymore. And the other thing that was honestly really, really hard last year was that my father passed away in August, and I managed to get back in time, and I got extra week with him, and I was really lucky that we were able to do all the services and the ceremonies.
Sorry to
And
hear that.
thank you, and just to see what a remarkable remarkable human he was, and the impact on the hundreds and hundreds of lives that he had that people came up and told me about. But then having to come back here afterwards and to be on my own here meant that it was a real test of the relationships I had with friends in the UK and family in the UK, and the relationships I'd made here. And it was, I felt very held all the way through it. But that was definitely a really tough thing in my first year in a new country for that to happen. But one of the beauties of working for Think Beyond, which is part of a bigger group called Benchmark, is that they looked after me so well. They gave me the time I needed. And it was almost a blessing that I was here on my own, because it meant that I could just step away. The only thing that stopped was the growth of the business here. Me stepping away didn't cause holes and problems in the UK business. Now, I don't think I'm that important that I'm not replaceable, or that I couldn't step away and everything would be fine. I think the point is when you step away without preparing people and telling people what's happening, that's where the challenge happened. So it was probably really lucky as well that I could just stop and let everything pause here and go back and do what I needed to do with my family, and make sure my mother was okay, my kid sister, that we did the services in the way that my father would have wanted them, and that he got to be celebrated so beautifully, and I didn't feel rushed. So, that's also something I would say about your career, is work for a business that's going to look after you and that values you and what you bring, because I really felt that when I had to go.
So how do you find that business or that company or where that
Yeah.
workplace that really values you?
Ask the hard questions in your interview. Interviews are a two-way thing. I expect the person I'm interviewing to be interviewing us as a business. I'm interested that they ask me about our culture in the business, about how we support people, about the way that we consider work-life balance, about how we help personal development. What do we think about health and well-being, physical and mental health combined? I want people to ask me those questions. And during the way that we interview people, we ask questions that are based on the values and behaviors that underpin our business. So values are really important, as I'm sure you know, but what's most important is describing the behaviors you want to see that bring those values to life. And so as we prepare our interview questions, yes, of course, they're about the competencies of the role, but they're also about your attitude and what you bring to it as a human being. I want people that are coming from all walks of life with loads of different experience. That's social, economic, ethnic, gender diversity, educational diversity, everything. The thing that brings us together is how that diversity lives through our values and behaviors. So you should ask those questions. You've got every right to ask those questions in interviews.
So wait, when you heard that you're coming here, what was your reaction? Or like, were you excited?
So it was a joint decision. It was my suggestion in the beginning to say, I think the business needs someone out here. I think it's the right thing for the business and I'd like to do it. And then if the business had said no, I'd have said totally fine, no problem. But they said no, actually that is a good thing. That we do need someone there. Let's have someone that knows the business and goes and does it. If they said no, I'd have been disappointed. But if it was the wrong thing for the business, I shouldn't be here. We decided it was the right thing for the business, and it took us 2 years for my visa to happen, because it was kind of during COVID, and is the sort of visa that I was coming in on. It took 2 years. So the business had moved on since then, so things were a little bit different. But I've wanted to live here since I was a kid.
Okay.
I've had this thing that I've needed to live here. So whatever happens, however successful or unsuccessful I am here, or if we decide, okay, I've set everything up here and I need to hand it over to someone here and head back, I will be grateful that I had the opportunity to live the 14-year-old's dream, and I get to live in New York. How cool is that?
So
Well-
do you prefer New York or UK?
Interesting. I feel so lucky that I love them both, because then I don't feel like I'm running away from one to the other. And if I had to leave one to go to the other, I don't feel like I'd be losing. So I grew up in a really in a very white part of the UK. We were definitely the only non-whites where I grew up, and it's a little bit different now. But I grew up in the countryside, and then when I started working, I moved to London, and I've spent the last 20 years in London before moving here, and I love them both for different reasons. I really do. And how lucky am I that I've got to live in both, you know?
Wait, so you watch soccer, right?
I watch soccer. I mean, almost every moment of the day if I could.
What's the favorite team?
I mean, I'm a Liverpool fan through and through.
Lived in Liverpool. I mean, London. Liverpool.
Let me tell you why. So my late father was in the Merchant Navy, and his first experience in the UK was docking in Liverpool, and he became a Liverpool fan. So when I was 4 years old, he was watching a game on television. It was Liverpool versus Chelsea. And honestly, I just wanted his attention. And he sat me on his knee and he introduced me to soccer, introduced me to Liverpool, and said, that's who we support. And honestly, my life changed that day, you know? Liverpool are actually a client of ours now as well, which is bonkers. It's probably good that I don't work on that client anymore because I just love them too much. But I love all sport. I've played a large number of sports to a fairly decent level, a representative level. I can watch any sport. Honestly, I can get obsessed with cornhole, for God's sake.
Okay, so I think Lawrence is also a Liverpool fan.
He is a Liverpool fan.
He is a
We
Liverpool
bonded over
fan.
that.
Yeah. Well, I asked him the same question. How do you feel about Jurgen Klopp leaving?
You know what? I'm sad. I'm really sad, but I'm really grateful that we get to have this exciting run in to the end of the season where we're still in contention, even with an entire injury list that would make a starting 11 almost anywhere in the world. And after how those kids performed against Southampton this week, I'm like, you know what? Whatever happens, we should be proud of the fact that we've maintained top of the league with that 11 off the field. And I love the fact that he's done it in the way that he's done it so honestly, you know, and that it's clear that the ethos and the Liverpool way that he has put into the entire club from the academy all the way up is coming through now because those lads fitted in beautifully. They pressed, they did the high press.
Yeah.
They played the Klopp way, right? The heavy metal football way. Maybe not as much as in 2019, the way we used to play, the way we play now. So yeah, I'm excited to see who we get. If we get Alonso, I'll be a happy girl.
Okay. So
I'm
the
also going to
Saints,
throw a curveball in, all right? I really would love John Barnes to manage Liverpool, but I know he never will. He's an
yes.
ambassador for the club, but he's my hero.
If you're enjoying this podcast, make sure to leave a like, subscribe, and leave a comment. Over 90% of you guys have not subscribed yet. So subscribe.
Kind of like moving back onto interviewing processes, right? Something that a lot of people, I believe, like they get stunned over the fact of interviewing. Even I had a workshop on interviewing, and the person who held the workshop, she was like, oh, you need, like you said, you need to have a two-way conversation, you need to ask them more questions and all that. So what are some interview tips that you would suggest from your perspective? Or
Yeah. Be yourself, tell the truth, and go in with the intention of having a two-way conversation is the start. And then when I say be prepared, what I mean is with examples of the things that you have done that are relevant to the role. So if you've got a job description and they've got a list of competencies or a list of things that they expect of you, make sure you've got an example of what you have done in those areas. Or if you haven't done anything directly in that area, something that you've done that's similar, that has a transferable skill. The thing that frustrates me most in an interview is when someone answers a question and they give me an answer about we and the team and all of this and we did this, and I'm like, I love that you're a team player. I want to know what your role specifically was in that journey and what you learned from it. You know, and I think that specificity, is that my dog causing problems under the table?
It's fine.
Rafi, come here. You can either edit that or leave it. Ralph, come here.
Gonna like
Hey,
I don't think he knows where to go.
so that way
you coming?
He's over there.
Here.
it's considering.
There you go. He didn't want to break. Come on, this side. Ralph. I might have to do my serious voice. You ready? Ralphie, come here. See, it makes no difference. Come here. Ralph, come
the most British
on. Come here. Good boy. Good boy. You going to sit? Will you sit for me? Very good boy. Well done. Okay, after that intermission, we are back. I want you to be specific about you and what you have done in the interview. And that doesn't mean you shouldn't say, I worked as part of a team to do this, but my role within the team was X, Y, and Z. That meant I did these things. This is what they contributed to the project, for example. At the beginning of interviews, I always tell the people we're interviewing that there are no trick questions. I am not trying to catch you out. I'm interviewing you for you to be successful and thrive. And so if you don't understand a question, you should just ask for some clarity. If an interviewer judges you on that, you don't want to work for that company, honestly. Interviews should be about us trying to sell our business to you and say, we want you, this is why we are a good company to work for. And you saying, this is how I can come and make your company better. This is what I can contribute. So prepare like that, and I think you'll be in a good position. Listen, nerves are normal. Nerves have two real functions, right? There is a physiological function that prepares your body for readiness. It's really primal. You need to be prepared to perform. You know that something's coming up. It's a fight or flight thing, but to have that physiological lift is really important. The key is to not let that turn into fear. Just seeing it as I know something's going to happen. I have to perform. So there is a risk to me here. Can I get my body in a place to perform optimally? And can I remember that I've got nerves because this means something to me? Nerves aren't bad. They're good. It's just about how we frame them in our heads.
So Lawrence said one thing, right? Opportunities knock on the door and you need to be prepared to take on them.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on that idea?
Every single job I've had from my first job through to this one have come from opportunities where people have said, I've heard you might be available. Oh, I've heard you might be interested in this. Can we have a conversation? Very rarely have I gone through full interview processes. Of course I have sometimes, but those opportunities have come up, and they come up if you give a good account of yourself. If you are reliable, if you show up, and if you're honest, I think opportunities come your way. I don't believe in nepotism at all. I don't believe,
Why don't you?
Why? Because it's not fair. It's not fair at all.
True.
If nepotism of course exists.
Yeah,
it's just
does.
It's just I don't think it means you get the best talent either. And I think it disadvantages the already disadvantaged. But giving a good account of yourself to people you come across in the business world means that if, let's say, I was interviewing someone and I know that they'd worked for some other people that I knew, I might say, hey, I just spoke to someone. How did you get on with them? I want to hear that they're great people. They're good humans. They work hard. They care. So, yeah, that's what I would say. I agree. Be ready to take opportunities, but recognize that, what's for you won't go by you. You don't have to take every opportunity. If it's for you, you'll know. I really believe in trusting your gut on that stuff.
Wait, okay. So it's just a curious question. I'm pretty sure Ramesh was showing me that you were a voice artist or something.
Yeah, I want to be one, and so I put it on my LinkedIn that I am one, and I've done little bits of it, and that's my tiny portfolio. I would love to do more voiceover work, not like acting voiceover work because have no talent there, but in terms of like fiction, non-fiction audiobooks or award show reels and stuff like that. I love doing stuff like that. I really do.
Has would you like to record an audiobook that's already released by someone like those?
Yeah.
Those sort of stuff.
Yeah, I'd also like to write my own and do one. I feel like
that book.
I probably will write the book. Well, listen, my father had written 1 million words at the time he passed away, and my sister and I need to turn that into his actual final book. It's about the trauma of partition in India told through my grandfather and my father's stories. And my sister has had 2 books published already. She's an academic, so I really feel like I need to catch up. So I tell you what book I am. I've sort of halfway through writing. I love tattoos. I have hundreds of them, and sports people use their body to express themselves. I use tattoos to express myself, and I have in the past been a self-harmer, and so there is something really interesting about how we use what's on our bodies to talk about the stuff that's inside our minds and our heads and how we express that. So I want to do a big coffee table photo book of 10 athletes, stories about their body art and what it means. So that's what I want to do, and just link it into how we use our bodies as an expression of our insides.
So you said that you used to be a self farmer. I don't wanna, if it's too
No,
sensitive,
no,
you know.
happy to talk about it.
But like I know for like there are obviously people out there that go through the same process. So what's something that you would advise on them to actually get out of that
Yeah,
and like handle in a different way?
yeah,
Because obviously self harm is because they probably go through stuff that they don't want to go through, like maybe a lot of depression,
yeah.
a lot of like suicidal thoughts and all that. So how does one like not do that?
You ask for help. You get brave and you ask for help. I promise that asking for help is the answer. And I think there are more and more ways to do so. You know, we have a campaign running at the moment in partnership with the Z Zurich Foundation in Z Zurich North America. It's called Head in the Game, and it is around youth preventative mental health in North America, in 4 states in particular, in New York, in Illinois, in Minneapolis, and in California. And it's focused on BIPOC communities, LGBTQ plus, and women and girls, because they have the least access to and the most impact on mental health issues. So going and asking for help is always the answer. Always the answer. And trusting that this too shall pass. Things change. You can get well. You know, I have had real challenges in my life. It included going into residential treatment for 3 months. Um, that was whilst I was in this job as well, and they supported me through that. And you know, I've been in therapy for a long time, for 20 years, but I still needed to go away and do the deep work. And I'm so glad that I did it, you know, and there's no shame in it. There is literally no shame in it. I guarantee that it's never, ever your fault. It is your responsibility to get well, but it's not your fault that it happened.
So how did you? So you said you coped through like therapy and stuff.
Yeah.
That's pretty good. So I guess like going back to the fact that you having a company that values your
Mm,
health being involved, all that. That's part
yeah.
of it.
And you know, I get to pay that forward now to our team. I really do. And the fact that we're doing this wonderful project with Zurich North America, people should have a look at it. You know, there's amazing resources on there. It's just at Head in the Game US on Instagram, or headinthegame.us is the microsite. It's on TikTok. It's on we've Kayla McBride has just signed on as an ambassador, WNBA, and you know, we've got athletes talking about the fact that this is real for lots of people, and here's how you can get help. And that's just one of many campaigns around destigmatizing the narrative around mental health.
So you worked with Billie Jean King, and I'm not sure if you worked with any other athletes of
Yeah.
such magnitude, but how did that feel like?
Oh my gosh. You know, meeting her for the first time was amazing, but I have to remember, she is not there to meet me. She's there to meet you. She's there to meet the young leaders. I'm the facilitator in the background. I am responsible on her behalf for making sure you all have a wonderful experience. So my job there is to make sure that everything that she needs is in a place that's there, and that you are all equipped to be able to have the conversations you need to have with Billie Jean. So you will be meeting her online shortly. We're just working out the date when she's
Oh.
going to meet all of the this year's cohort, and you will all have the opportunity to tell her about who you are in your work. What is remarkable about Billie Jean King is that she remembers. You know, she remembers Matt and Harrison from 2019 all the way through to the people this year, and she'll remember what you're doing, and she cares about it, and she'll ask questions, and she'll help if she can, over and above what she's already doing. But I have had the very great privilege of working with a number of world-class athletes. As part of Think Beyond, we have a talent representation arm and a talent strategy arm. And for 5 years, I spent 4 of the 5 years delivering and designing Michael Johnson's Young Leaders Award. So Michael Johnson, 4-time Olympic gold medalist. I think 4 times. I might have done him a disservice there. 400 and 200 Olympic gold medals, world records. The face of the Atlanta 1996 Olympics, and one of the most incredible businessmen I've ever met in my entire life. And I got to work with him directly, running his young leaders program and watching him with the young leaders, hanging out with them, having a Diet Coke with them and having a chat. And one of them saying, oh, I fancy someone, and he getting on the phone to that person, being a real person, but also then sitting in front of them and talking to them about leadership and what it means to be a leader, what it means to be an athletic performer on the field of play. That he changed sprinting. Before Atto Bolden changed sprinting, he changed sprinting. Sorry, not Atto Bolden. Usain Bolt changed sprinting. He changed sprinting. I got to work with him. I get to work with Carl Frampton, who was Boxer of the Year in the ring, by the ring in like 10 years ago. One of the best boxers in the world, has boxed all over the world. I got to work with him for a little bit. I get to work with 2 field hockey players that won Olympic gold in Rio in 2016, Kate and Helen Richardson-Walsh. And it's wonderful, but the reality is they're humans. Our job is to understand what within those humans has made them do extraordinary things. And the best part of it is the reason I work with them is because they want to make a difference in the world. Our talent agents look after their commercial impact and make sure that they are optimizing their work on the field of play. But we only work with talent who care about something wider than that. And my job is the wider than that piece. Like, how amazing to be talking to people that are remarkable and could do nothing with that platform but choose to do something, and I get to be the one that helps them unlock what's already inside themselves.
So how does it feel to mediate between like the young leaders who ask you to like these amazing things and like magical stuff that they do? Like some people are like they have their own books written and stuff like that, and to work with athletes who have accomplished like world class level. So how does it feel to like mediate between that and like?
I do exactly the same thing. Nothing changes because I'm working with humans. You're at different stages in what you want to do, but I ask very similar questions. The coaching sessions I do for the national honorees aren't dissimilar to the first session I spend with an athlete. Just spending time with them, talking to them, asking questions, understanding who they are, what their background is, what's happened in their world to make them care about what they care about. Or if they don't know what they care about, helping them find that and helping them find the why. I do it, it's the same. It's people. It's just people at the end of the day. It's just that the platform is different and the level of life experience is different.
So do you think that people crazy over people like let's say for example Messi, someone who's like everyone who crazes over. So do you think that people crazing over him like that is like kind of a bad thing, because he's at the end of the day he's also another human. He also needs his space and all that.
I think that there's a line that people cross that they shouldn't. But the reason that sport is such a powerful tool is because we have these wonderful role models that can either use their platform for good or use it for bad, right? We've seen both in this world.
Yeah.
I think one of the interesting things is there was a study done by MIT, and in the 50s, when you ask people who influenced them the most, sports people are around 20%, politicians were around 20%. MIT reran that study, I think it was 2021, 2022, and athletes are 51%. And I think it was 51%, and politicians 5%.
Damn.
So how can we not recognize that that is a good thing? I think people go too far, being intrusive into their private lives, to their kids' lives. I don't think that's okay. But I also think that I think we could better prepare our athletes to understand how to manage it and to support them, particularly those. In soccer is a great example. You come in at such a young age. On Wednesday, Liverpool fielded a 15-year-old, right? A 15-year-old that starts earning the sort of money that he may start earning. They're not supported around themselves with people that are real, not people that just say yes to them. We've seen what happens to athletes. We've seen what happens if they get injured and they lose their career. We've seen what happens at transition. And I think sport is getting better at putting the protection around athletes. And certainly some stuff I've been lucky enough to work on is around athlete transition. And part of that is about recognizing athletes as whole people. At performance level, some athletes, when we've done athlete research and I've been doing focus group with athletes, They've said, I just need to be more than my time. I need to be more than my stats. I need to be more than that. And if we allow them to be more than that whilst they're competing, A, their performances will be better and more rounded because they won't overthink things. And B, they're going to have a safer transition out of the sport and probably a more lucrative career at the end of it.
It was fascinating that 51%
Yeah.
of athletes, they could like win elections maybe.
You know what? We've seen it before. We've
I
seen
think-
it before.
Actually, yeah, maybe. Yeah.
Tony Weah.
He's
Dude,
Yeah,
I have no
played.
clue.
He, wow. Okay, you need to look up Tony Weah, and then his son plays for the US.
oh yeah.
No, George
What?
Weah. Tony, his son, plays for the US. George Weah.
What is he? Oh, wait.
He was president of. I've forgotten the country now. I think it's in sub-Saharan Africa. That's bad. That I've
Oh yeah,
forgotten
I
it.
think I heard
Yeah,
of
yeah.
that too. Yeah.
Yeah,
I
but,
think
I mean,
yeah.
he was FIFA World Player of the Year. He won the Ballon d'Or.
Oh yeah, I
Oh,
think
yeah,
I heard
was
that.
it?
Yeah, it was one
I
of
saw
the.
there was this, they were making a reel out of it.
Yeah,
and, like, kind of like it was supposedly a funny joke about it, but yeah, I think that
Yeah.
was about.
And then
that
his
was
son started playing, right? And then, of course, you have it when it all goes wrong, like in Pakistan with Imran Khan. You know,
yeah.
he was one of the greatest cricketers of
Heard.
all time.
Yeah.
You know what? We're not going to get into Southeast Asian politics here, but I think the point is that we've seen it. We've seen it.
I did not know that Imran Khan was a cricketer.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
My
He's
friend
in.
crazes over him.
Ah.
He's in jail.
I know
he
he's
is
in
now.
jail. My friend crazes over him.
There was a little rumor in London for a while that Sol Campbell was going to run for mayor of London.
Also, it's ironic that it's in like the Prime Minister Indian, right, for the
Yeah,
UK.
Rishi Sunak,
That's
yeah.
very
What are your
ironic.
thoughts on that?
Honestly,
you being an Indian.
I am so disappointed because I think his politics are awful. The fact is that he is the son of an immigrant and he wants to ship people in planes who are seeking asylum and send them to Rwanda. I think he is doing nothing for the South Asian brand, and neither are the other politicians of our descent. Their politics almost ignore their own histories and say, you know what, we had my parents had the immigrant experience in the UK where they weren't wanted, and you know both of my parents are a result of empire. You know, my mother was born in Uganda, and when Idi Amin came in, they all got thrown out, and my father was born in Karachi the year before partition, and you know my father's family are Hindu Sikh, so they couldn't stay there and they had to escape. So you know I'm so sad about it. I'm so sad about it. I don't think it's good. But we have an election coming up this year, as do we over here in the US. So, and obviously India and Pakistan are electing at the moment. So the whole world order could change in this next year, either for the good or the bad, depending on how you feel.
Hopefully for the best.
Yeah.
But being an immigrant and actually like you didn't experience it firsthand, right? But hearing about the story about Indian partition, because that was a big moment in history, and your mother was from Uganda.
Yeah, she was born in Uganda, but they're all Indian.
All right, so all that like how did that like? Because me personally, I was born in Jordan. I lived in Egypt. Right? I was raised in Egypt, and I came here. But how did that feel for you? Because I felt it at first person, but you were like.
I honestly I found it so hard to really understand my heritage, and it's been a real journey. I'm so proud of it now, but there were times where I was scared of it because it made me different. I was always quite different to people, but it made me different, and I didn't want to be different because no kid wants to be different. You want to be part of, you want to feel the same. And I was so different. Now I'm so proud of it. I'm so proud of everything that it's given me. But also the fact that my parents brought us up very liberally. You know, we didn't grow up around lots of other Indian families, so I had a very different experience to lots of my cousins, and so you know I've had a more rounded experience in some ways, and I've met a broader range of people in my life. But I've also travelled the world with my job. I've been to so many different countries. I did a huge piece of work for the Commonwealth, and travelled all over the place and spoke to people from 71 different nations and territories, you know, and you know, and then I've also had the privilege of inaugurating a safe space in Sao Paulo and one in Bogota and two in India actually, which was working on those two spaces in India was probably a really big part of me feeling real pride in my heritage. So we opened a space in Bangalore in a school, and it was wonderful. And then we opened a space in Mumbai in Dharavi, the biggest slum in Asia, 1 million people in that slum. And my parents had just retired, and they decided they'd go to India whilst I was going to be there working, and they were going to come and watch the inauguration. And that's the first time my parents have really seen what I do at work. And it was really special to be able to have that moment with them there. We had some cricketers come down. It felt like 1 million people were there. It was amazing, amazing, amazing. But that was my work has also helped me heal that relationship because I get to go and work there. So I think that I think it's a journey because I experienced racism. Of course, I did, not in the same way my parents did, at all. But we all still experience racism and discrimination, whether they're microaggressions, assumptions people make. When I started speaking once, someone said, "Oh, I didn't expect you to sound like that," or when people say, "Oh, where are you really from?" That sort of othering. It still happens, and it still happens a lot. But that's also, I get to make a difference in work with that. We do a wonderful project for the North Face, which is around making the outdoors more accessible and more welcoming to ethnically diverse communities. I've never been skiing, right? I had an opportunity to go skiing when I was 14, and I had really bad shin splints at the time. And I went to the hospital, and they said, if you put a ski boot on, you'll break you'll break both legs. You can't go. And obviously, my parents, I'm a working class kid. Skiing wasn't on the agenda, in the countryside. But I always think about the fact that I don't, that doesn't make sense to me going there. I'd love to be able to give it a try, but it scares me that I would be there and be the only person. So the work we're doing with the North Face is about changing that. And we've created this really cool online digital course called Allyship in the Outdoors. It's available to everyone. It's online, and you just get to go and learn about what it means to be an ally and how you can be an ally, and why being an ally is important to make spaces more inclusive. Because a bunch of people in that journey, as we went through that process with North Face, didn't even realize that they weren't. There is just intrinsic things that you, through privilege, are brought up knowing, and therefore, when others don't know you feel out of place. So yeah.
So like, how did it feel for you to live in a? You said that you lived in a townish place,
Like
correct?
in the countryside,
In
in
a
a village,
countryside,
a
in a
tiny village.
countryside village, tiny village, right? And you said that majority of them were like same race
Yeah,
and all that. And then now you just moved to the world's most diverse place, right?
yeah.
How does that feel?
I mean, I was lucky because London is so diverse
Oh, yeah.
as well. And where I went to university, a place called Loughborough, is right next to a city called Leicester, and Leicester is one of the biggest hubs of Southeast Asian community in the UK, and so there was a greater mix at university. Now I just, you know, we're still in an industry that is very white male heavy. It's changing. It is absolutely changing, but it hasn't changed, you know, entirely. And there are still, um, we see the way that female athletes are treated. There's there's an ex soccer player called Joey Barton, um, who is a horrific human being, and the stuff that he has been saying about the women's soccer team in the UK is awful. What's even worse about it is the comments that are coming up in support of it. And that tells you the scale of the problem still, whether it's gender or whether it's race, there are still issues. That was my dog shaking.
Oh. So like one thing that we went over with Lawrence is the unequal treatment with between men's World Cup and the women's World Cup, where we discussed saying that the men's World Cup happens like a year, and then after that it's just like, oh, the women's World Cup happens, but nobody really realizes because they're still recovering from the men's World Cup. But what he said that was why don't we just have the men's World Cup, yeah, men's World Cup and the women's World Cup in the same year, like the tennis tournaments that happen.
Yeah. Be really interesting.
So what are your
I
thoughts on that?
think it would. So I think that women's football has had to make a decision to not try and recreate itself as a secondary version of the men's game, but as a product in and of itself. And I think it's done a really good job of that. So I think bringing them together wouldn't necessarily help. I think it would probably dilute the amount of commercial engagement that comes in, which would dilute the amount of money. I think that we are seeing a sea change. All of the data and research out there around investing in women's sports and the return on investment you get is growing. The records watching NCAA women's tournament. I guarantee the women's March Madness will have greater viewership than the men's March Madness again. I think we're seeing it change.
I mean, there was, I think, the last World Cup was they increased the price, increased the pay,
Yeah.
and they also increased like I think the viewership also grew
Yeah,
like
even
by.
the stadiums are getting packed. Like they're hitting max
So
capacity.
I mean, last weekend, an Arsenal women's home game filled out the Emirates. 80,000, 80,000, 60,000, 80,000 watching a women's WSL game. And that is, when I was playing, and I went to watch the Women's FA Cup final in 1990. I think it was 1993, 1994. There were about 300 people there. I've been to see a number of FA Cup finals, men's FA Cup finals that Liverpool were playing in packed stadiums, and now to see that women's FA Cup final is completely full, seeing the amazing NYNJ Gotham City FC. Like, I love how going to watch them play. I think we're seeing a change. I think maybe 20 years ago, if they'd started putting them together, it might have worked. They've tried it in other sports, like you're saying, but in tennis, they've always been played at the same time. That doesn't mean women have been treated the same. Last year was 50 years since equal pay in at the US Open, and we're still not at equal pay everywhere, right? We're still not. There's still a long way to go. But things are changing. They could change faster, sure.
So like, what are your thoughts on? So what do you suggest that people do to actually like bring more inclusivity in sports? Because as you said, there's that aspect that a lot of women are not being represented properly, and also there are certain countries, right, because of cultural reasons, right? For example, India, that's a good example that they restrict women from actually moving on or
Yeah.
doing stuff. So what are your thoughts on those?
So I think this is where sport has a wonderful role to play at lots of different levels. There are some amazing non-profits working in this space in India. Two of them in particular, I will use India as example: Magic Bus and Slum Soccer. And the journey is always it's about educating the parents and educating the community about the rights of women and girls. And sport can be a great mechanism to teach, because it's not about it's as much as it's about teaching women and girls they have rights, it's about also teaching men and boys that women and girls have rights and why. And it's a long journey, and sport isn't magic. How we use it can be magic, and it can only play a certain type of role. So there's what happens on the ground, and then there's what happens in sport in and of itself. So the bodies that organise sport, who's on their board, who's making the decisions there. If their board is 70% of the same human, they're going to make the same decisions all the time. So sport has a responsibility to, in and of itself, the people running it should represent the people that they want it to be for. And then where do brands come in? Where do brands come in and say, we're not going to sponsor that unless actually we want to do a women's engagement program with you. I'll give you a really good example. Canadian Tire up in Canada, 50% of their sponsorship dollars go to women's sports. Full stop. That is a powerful statement for a company to make. And then how they build it up, how they deliver that on the ground through their foundation, through Canadian Tire Jumpstart charities, is also relevant to that. And then you have the government level, right? And this is where it comes out of our hands a little bit, but where sport can be a lobbying tool for that. Where the big major events and the big international federations, if they do the right thing, and not all of them do, as we know, they could have something really powerful to say. So it's at every level sport has a role to play, but it can't do it on its own. We're not going to change the world with sport on its own, but used with intention in the right way, we can be part of the solution.
So if sports is possibly like one of the things as a solution, right? What do you think is like holding back a lot of people from actually pursuing it or like using sports to doing it? To do
Opportunity.
it?
Opportunity, you know, I think um, firstly, you know, the economy is in a place where people can work 3 jobs and only still make ends
Yeah,
meet, right?
that's definitely true.
Right. And so at what point can you then think about those other things and say, I want my daughter, son to, I want to be able to pay for them to do that. So I think there's an access issue. Um, there's obviously a societal structural issue about that. And I think we have to just continue to elevate the role of sports and not just pretend that it's magic, right? That we have to use it. And so that's why I love the work of the Beyond Sport Foundation, because they amplify the work that's going on. They regularly do stories on CITC, you know? So people just don't know.
So, do you think that if we broadcast more of what's happening, or like televise it, or as you said, like host more events and make it more public, do you think that will cause an impact?
Yeah, I think so. But I think it's about how we do it. This is where we bring together all of those levels, you know, in, you know, in the linear broadcast of, you know, you saw the linear broadcast, you might have seen the Super Bowl, right? You know, they'll intersperse stories of impact on the ground. How do we do that a bit more? How do we do that not just at the marquee events, you know, at the NBA finals, at the Super Bowl, at the Stanley Cup? How do we do that in every part? Every time we're talking about there's a game on, right? And that doesn't mean we take the focus away from the performance on the field of play, but in the build up, we've got, you know, I can spend 2 hours before kickoff watching content, right? And I do. Um, but how do we filter in? Oh, actually, during this time, I don't know, Megan Rapinoe went to visit this organization. This is how they're using soccer. This is why she thinks it's important. If you want to get involved, here you go, right? It's all of those things. It all has to come together.
Do you think that the WNBA and I'm not sure if NFL has a women's division, do they?
No, but the flag football is becoming more and more focused on women's. And we've obviously got flag football is now in the 2028 Olympics, which means women's will be able to play.
What are some events that you did? Have you? I'm pretty sure you said.
Sports.
Yeah.
So I played soccer, I played rugby, I played cricket.
No, like the events that you have like hosted.
Oh,
yourself.
just all of the Beyond Sport United events. I hosted the Special Olympics Youth Leadership Global Youth Leadership Forum for 4 days in Azerbaijan. I hosted Sport Industry Next Generation.
What was the
launch.
biggest event?
The biggest launch? Probably the 4 days in Azerbaijan. Yeah.
How much preparation would you? How much like? Was it a lot of workload
Yeah.
or?
Yeah, I was writing the scripts. I was curating the content for the event. I was hosting with a young man with intellectual disabilities, so I was also writing his scripts and helping him prepare. We were a great team on stage because he was really funny. He was so good. He was brilliant. He made me look much better than I am, to be honest. I hosted the European Union's Sports Awards.
That's a big one.
Yeah, you'd think so. A lot of it was in COVID, so a lot of it was online.
Oh,
So I don't know how many people. There could have been 7. There could have been 7 million. I don't know. But yeah.
so how does it like how did you get over because if in order to speak in front of like that many people to be a host, you had to overcome the idea of public speaking.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
How did you get over
I
that?
can't-
That's
You know what?
something that apparently I don't remember the statistics on top of my head, but that's the most scariest thing that scares everyone basically.
Just start stuttering. I did.
So
School projects or not.
I think that this is one of the reasons sometimes my head is screwed on the other way to normal people. Until the last few years, always found it really hard to have a one-on-one conversation with people. Maybe the last 8 years, maybe it's taken me. In the last 8 years, I found it much easier to have one-on-one conversations with people. I've always found that really hard. I've never had a problem standing on a stage speaking in front of thousands. That's never been an issue. It's intimate one-on-one conversations that I used to struggle with. Now I can do both. And so the reason I find it maybe less scary than others is because I know it's not about me. It is not about me when I stand up there. My job is to be of service to the people that are listening, because I'm very rarely up there as a specific expert. I'm up there to bring experts onto a stage, get them to talk about stuff, and then wrap it up in a way that makes sense for as many people as possible. And so that I have a job to do up there that is not about me showing off. As long as I know it's not about me, we're okay. The moment I start thinking it's about me, I'm not going to do a good job, really. You know, it's really not. It's about the experts on the stage and how I help them tell their story better.
So I guess like you just so you're not really like scared of speaking to other people. Much.
Just natural.
Not
It's just
yeah,
natural kind of for you.
yeah, but I've had what's unnatural is speaking to people one on one, and I've had to learn how to do that. I still get nervous about that.
How did you get over that?
Practice,
Yeah.
practice,
How do you
and
suggest?
trusting with trusted friends helping me. You know, I always found two people conversations terrifying. Three people was okay, but two people was terrifying, and now I'm fine.
We're fine right now.
We're totally fine. We've got 4 here and a dog. I'm safe. But yeah, I found it really, really hard. And just part of that is just getting to know yourself and understanding why you're scared, you know? Because I just didn't have lots of self-confidence and self-esteem. And you just build that by doing good things. You build self-esteem by doing esteemable things and trusting that you're a good human and that you're trying your best.
I mean, you had a hobby of being a journalist, right? And
Yeah.
then so I think it was just natural for
Yeah.
you.
Telling other people's stories is amazing.
And then voiceover, yeah.
I think that one thing that when you mature on is that you need to know how to tell stories, right? So how does one learn to actually curate a story and present it properly? Because that's like one-on-one conversations too.
Yeah. Three things that I think make stories interesting. You make a statement, you say some sort of statistics to back it up, and then you tell a story that's personal. The only way to tell us to make people engage is to tell a human story. You know, we can talk about big statistics and we can talk about, you know, what they mean, but what they mean to an individual is the most important thing. So whenever I'm curating content, I'm thinking, what is the statement I want to say? What do I want people to know? What's the data that backs it up? And what's the real story that makes sense? So if we're talking about diversity and inclusion in sport, right? I might say a stat, like I might say a statement about why it's important. I might say a statistic that backs up where the issue is, and then I'll tell a story of the fact that of my history that I am second generation. This is my father's story. This is my mother's story. I got really lucky in sports because I went to a tiny village school that happened to have an amazing physical education teacher who was totally up for all girls playing everything. And as a result of that, I got lucky. And that it shouldn't be luck, right? It shouldn't be luck. It should be designed in that it's for everyone. And so that's how I would tell that story. Always thinking about, you know, if you think about what makes you remember things, what do you remember? You remember the human piece, the piece that connects with you. So I think that's the most important part of a story.
But how do you like it's like you have a one-on-one conversation with someone, right? Obviously when you're doing like a presentation or something, you need statistics and all that. But when you're in on a one-on-one conversation with someone genuinely just
You
it's
just
not
don't prepare. You never prepare for that. You're just yourself. Just show up.
Just be you.
Yeah, just be
be you.
you. Just show up is what I've learned. There's also a real bit, right? Trust your instincts. There are some people you just don't share things with, right? There are some people that are not good. If you come out of a conversation feeling exhausted and like someone has taken everything out of you, don't hang out with them. You know, if you come out of a conversation energized, engaged, feeling like you've been heard, feeling like you've heard them, those are the people you want in your world.
How did you build connections while being in college or like being in what we call high school here?
Yeah, sports.
Sports?
Sports.
Sports
Always.
is a language. Or
Yeah,
soccer's a
it's
language.
honestly, I love it so much. You know, I've always had lots of acquaintances. As you get older, you get really tight friends. I've got a small handful of ride or die people in my life, and then I've got a circle around that of people that I know care about me and would do anything for me, and likewise. And then there's a circle around that that would show up if I asked them, and vice versa. And there's a circle around that that I'm never going to call, you know. And that's just how we do it, and it changes as you get older.
I think like by time filters out the best and time filters out the bad.
I hear that. I love that.
That's definitely true. Okay, so what's one advice you will give to yourself 3 years ago, or
3
just 3 years ago, or someone younger than you,
3 years ago for me,
Or in the past.
or in the past,
in
or
the past, I would say ask for help earlier. Ask for help earlier. That would be it. You know, look after your soul, look after your mental health. Ask for help earlier. Um, for a younger person, I would say you don't need all the answers right now.
Mm.
Go live your life. Go experience. You don't need to know. I still don't know what I want to be when I grow up, right? You know, I am enjoying the journey right now, day at a time. I love what I do. So, yeah, I think there's so much pressure on young people to know who you want to be, what you want to be right now.
Yeah,
Impossible.
definitely.
I'm still not entirely sure, and I'm 42 years old. You know, there's still a long way to go, I hope, to continue to find out. So, yeah.
So do you think that the social culture norm where you need to know where you're going to do by high school, college, you need to know like, or else you're doomed for life. Is that what are your thoughts on that
I just
mentality?
don't believe it's true. I don't believe it's true. I love the fact that over here you don't have to major immediately. You
Yeah,
get the opportunity
to
to
explore.
build this beautiful, rounded education that allows you to have critical thoughts, mathematical thoughts, the ability to construct an argument. Gives you a much wider range of skills before you specialize. Um, yeah, and I think I've seen so many people change career halfway through. You know, I think it's really possible.
Well, thank you for coming and joining us today.
Thank you for the opportunity. It's lovely
No
to speak to
problem.
you.
And yeah, hopefully, I hope the best wishes for your future endeavors.
Thank you.
And yeah, sorry to hear about your father.
That's kind of you. Thank you.
And we are looking forward to your book.
Okay, now I feel like more pressure. This is good. I need more pressure to do it. Thank you for putting all of this together, and I will introduce you to some really incredible women to add to your roster.
Definitely.
Thank you.
Looking forward.
Thanks.
Thank you guys for watching this episode of Hard to Make, produced by Mars Studios. If you guys enjoy this podcast, please do leave a like, comment, and subscribe. And do follow us on Instagram and Spotify. Thank you.